As many of you now know, a man by the name of Shay Taylor was shot and killed by Seattle police officers on February the 21st, 2016. According to an article done by the Seattle Times on February the 22nd, SPD said Taylor was armed and unresponsive to the commands of police officers. Furthermore, he reached for a gun despite being surrounded. When the officers saw him going for his gun, they opened fire on Taylor. Pretty cut and dry, right? He reached for a gun and the police had no choice but to shoot him. Let's, however, take a look at the evidence. Here is the footage from the dash cam. The footage shows Taylor putting his hands up. Taylor receives a command to get down, and he gets down, disappearing from view. Everything else that Taylor does cannot be seen on camera, and all we have is the testimony of the officers and a civilian. But what we can see is that he actually does obey the officers. He was not unresponsive, as reported. Did he reach for a gun? According to the police and the civilian, yes. Question: where was this civilian and how did they see Taylor reach for a small gun from their angle? We have absolutely no information on the civilian. In the police write-up, Taylor was described as being clearly armed, but when Police Captain Sean O'Donnell was asked if Taylor was actually armed during the incident, he said he was not sure.
So you said he was known to be armed. Was he in fact armed?
That's still, we're looking at that. Clearly, it's a crime scene that has just occurred, and we're taking a look to see if the suspect was armed or not.
How do you go from we are not sure if he was armed on the 21st and by the 22nd, he was clearly armed? Typically, testimony given closest to the time of the actual event is more reliable than the stories that follow. So clearly the story changed from one day to the next. How do you open fire on a man with rifles, administer CPR, put him on a gurney, send him to the hospital, and still not know if he was armed during that shooting? The Seattle Times said detectives served search warrants as part of the investigation and recovered Taylor's gun. Recovered it when? And from where? According to The Telegraph, a news outlet based in London, the police told them that they recovered the gun from Taylor at the hospital. So you mean he rode in the ambulance with the gun all the way to Harborview? Does that make any sense at all? As the smear campaign began to dehumanize Taylor, pictures of the firearm and holster surfaced. The style of this holster is an outside of the waistband holster, which means it's not designed to be carried inside of a person's pants, thus making it easier to get to, but also easier to see. Why would a man out on parole walk around illegally carrying a gun outside of his pants? Many people bring up his record as grounds for the shooting. However, cops are not allowed to use deadly force just because someone is a known felon. So bringing up his record is quite simply a way to dehumanize him. But in America, even free felons who have served their time have rights. Furthermore, there is far less coverage of Officer Michael Spaulding's past, in which he shot a man with schizophrenia in another controversial case a few years back. Here is the bottom line. 1. Cops said before the footage came out that Taylor was unresponsive to their commands. He wasn't. 2. After Taylor gets down on the ground, we cannot see his actions. 3. The civilian is a mystery. 4. The earliest testimony of the police captain says they were unsure if Taylor was armed at the time of the shooting. The next day, however, the story had changed and he was now clearly armed. 5. The Telegraph said the gun was recovered at the hospital. As time goes on, SPD will undoubtedly frame the narrative in a way that favors their organization. However, when you find gross contradictions in a story over a period of time, someone is lying.